today. And General, please go ahead, give us your opening remarks.
Thank you, Nada, for hosting me. And I'd like to thank all the colleagues who have put the activities they've been in on the side and been able to join us on the different platforms. It's our pleasure to engage with you today on the different platforms on which we'll be communicating. Thank you.
Tell me more of a personal question. I want to know what drives you to wake up every day and give inspiration to so many people in Uganda.
We've been going through challenges as a people, as a country, for the last 60 years since independence. And many of us, I believe, when we travel, we see what happens elsewhere in countries which are well organized, where systems operate, where institutions are stable and strong, where people are able to live in environments where there is equality for the law, where there is justice, where there is transparency in the management of national affairs, political as well as economic. That gives us the impetus, those of us who want to see meaningful change, to see systems established which function, to see an environment where people are able to apply their God-given talents, to apply the skills and the educational levels that they acquire through school, to ensure that the potential that people have is realized because of an enabling environment that we as political actors would need to establish in this country as a sine qua non, as something necessary for a country to be put on track where there is sustained development, but at the same time where we have a people who enjoy themselves, who live in dignity as they apply their efforts in whatever endeavor they are in. We know that can only happen when investment is first and foremost put into the individual citizen, because the individual is the main actor in the development process of the country. So you have to ensure that that citizen, one, is well educated, they are skilled, well trained, and they have got good health services to which they can get access in case of having any challenges in their health, to ensure that they are well fed, which means you must also invest in food security. Because once that individual lives in that kind of environment where they are well educated, they are skilled, there is an environment in which they can apply their efforts in whatever endeavor they are in, whether in their professions, whether they are in business, whether it is manufacturing or the services industry or wherever they are at, to know that they will achieve their maximum potential in whatever they are doing. And of course, to ensure that there is food security where they can be well fed and their children. So our development program is designed around the individual citizen, and then we build the necessary environment and the necessary infrastructure to support this citizen to engage in a sustained economic development process. That's our main focus. And as we build Alliance for National Transformation, we keep on trying to attract people who are like-minded. We are a value-driven organization because we know that at the core of the development process, you must also have individuals who are convinced that when they apply their efforts in building the whole, then the part will benefit. Hitherto, the philosophy in this country has been the individuals want to develop themselves, and they think that out of the individual development, maybe the whole may benefit. We think the other way around. Society must be developed, and then the individual will benefit in whatever they apply their efforts onto because of the general development of the country itself. That's our main focus. Nada?
Thank you very much for that. I want you to, for our listeners, to just summarize the vision of ANT, if you can. Like in corporate world, all the companies have vision and mission. Please enlighten our listeners. What is the vision of ANT? And also, why did you choose to pursue that vision? I know it's a bit of a repetition, but let's have just a brief, punchy summary.
We want to create an environment in our country where individuals can apply their talents to achieve the utmost benefit in the endeavors in which they apply that effort.
But no effort can start from no platform, so to say. So I think we need to draw some learning from our history. And I believe you have a very vibrant history in Uganda. So can you tell us a little bit about what can you draw as parallels from your young days when you were in your teenage years, when you decided to fight for change? What can you say about that time and today, and what has changed and what has remained the same?
When I was still a young man in the 60s and in the 70s, I think one thing that I can recall that is different in comparison with where we are at now is the sense of dignity in the people. Regardless of whether one was wealthy or not, people had a sense of dignity. You could not compromise a person with money just because, even when he didn't have visible wealth. That's different from what I notice now. I get a sense that money has almost been elevated to a level where people almost think that everybody has a price, where people are compromised even for the smallest amount of money when it comes like to elections, where you find that a person's vote is being bought for 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings. When we were growing up, you could never see that. People had a sense of integrity. At that time, in actual fact, there was a sense of shame. I think that was a factor in many people not even becoming corrupt. I remember, like in the area where I come from in Ankole, there is a treasurer, I forget the name, in the 60s, in the accounting process of the district monies. I think he failed to account for about 100 shillings at that time. That was a significant amount of money. And he had to resign. Now, compared to what is happening now, we are poles apart. It is like the 60s were on the North Pole, and where we are at right now is like we're on the South Pole. I think that is one of the most frightening things. A country's strength depends on the strength of individuals who are within that society. And the strength of individuals is really accrues from character, not from money, not from possessions. It's from character, integrity, having men and women who are honest. They are prevailing a sense of shame for those who act outside the norms or the values established in that society. That has gone. That has been reestablished because it is possible. We have seen countries which have gone through the same process we're going through, and they have reestablished the values that are normally common to all societies that are stable, to all societies where the dominant number of people believe in integrity, believe in transparency, believe in fairness, believe in justice. Nada?
How can we get back on track? What do we do? I'm sure that there are many people who would want to be straightforward, who would want to be upright morally, and who would want to change, but how do we start initiating that change?
We don't have to, let me put it this way. There are a significant number of Ugandans who, if they are willing and committed to that cause, that would want to reestablish values within our society, there's an adequate number of Ugandans who can do that. The most painful thing, or the most unfortunate thing, is that most of them are not fully engaged in politics. For some strange reason, they are standing on the sidelines or sitting on the fence. I think that is the biggest challenge that I notice. But for there being Ugandans who can do things and do them the right way, they are there. Unfortunately, they have left politics. There's a saying, a common saying here in Uganda, that politics is a dirty game, and as is common with nature, the dominant force determines the direction of things. So if the dominant force in politics is those who are crooked, those who are corrupt, that's the direction the country takes. But when people get tired and recognize that they must recover that ground, and the honest men and women, the men and women who believe in integrity, who believe in transparency, the moment they get back into the mainstream of politics and recapture dominance, then a country turns around. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any other way that can be done.
I had here prepared two questions from our followers on Twitter. One is from Sean Basu, but I will convert that into an observation. He says that you spent a lot of time preaching, building grassroots structures for the party leadership ahead of the 2021 general elections. What is the party's strategy moving forward, given that even the few incumbent then MPs who ran on the NT ticket lost their seats? But the real question I want to ask is on behalf of Arnold Buenavista. What plans do you have to encourage the youth to join elective politics come 2026?
We have plans. We had rolled out a program a year ago, a pilot project, which we did in about 3 sub-regions, which was quite successful, where we made tours at the sub-county level. Actually, we did it in 3 districts. It was successful. Now they're rolling out to do it across the whole country. The main impediment has been resources. So our main focus for all this period has been to raise the resources necessary to send the teams that would need to go and do that. That's what we are focusing on right now. The main effort is in resource mobilization, and then the plan can roll out. As for attracting the young people, we have got a youth league, which connects very closely with the Women League and the mainstream party. And we keep on talking about the programs that would benefit the youth, but also to try and communicate the youth that since they are the majority, because 70% are below 35, and the main effort that we are engaged in right now as a people, as a country, is how to influence the future, that they must participate in whatever parties they subscribe to. Those who subscribe to Alliance for National Transformation, to know that those numbers need to be used to create the environment that will enable the youth to apply their efforts and succeed in whatever endeavors they are in. I mean, we see what is happening elsewhere in the whole world. There are so many opportunities right now that we never had in the last century or in the last few decades with technological developments. We have noticed that if those who Google and look at the multi-billionaires who are in America or even like in China, like Jack Ma, look at them and see how they start small. Some start in their garages with just a computer. What they do is apply their minds, those who are innovative, those who are creative, and you can escalate in a very short period of time. However, for that to happen, one, there must be an environment, a political economic environment that is created. Two, the investment behind winning ideas. And I think that's what is lacking here in Uganda. Because those who succeed, for example, in America, when you read the stories of all those multi-billionaires who started young in their 20s, a number of them in their 30s, they get, an idea, they pitch it in different groups of those who do the venture capitalists. And once a venture capitalist is convinced that this idea actually can fly, they put in the money, whether it's $100,000, $200,000, or $500,000. And when the idea succeeds, as those which have succeeded, then to benefit the venture capitalist and the person who originates the idea. Now, in Uganda, of course, we don't have venture capitalists. So a role like that would have to be played by government. But even when there are resources already put into such ventures, there must be a meritocracy that would have been established, which is one of our intentions to do. That you have a set of people who will go and listen to individuals and not be influenced by blood relations, not be influenced by biological relations or social relations or cultural relations, ethnic or religious, but they look at an idea and know that this idea can fly. And once they pass it, this person can get the money. And then we will get the Okellos, the Mukasas, the Mafabis, the Owinos, the Namtebis. All those, there can be Jack Ma's in Uganda. There can be all these American multi-billionaires we see. Because when you look at someone like Bill Gates, he didn't fall from Mars. Nor have all these who have made the money that they have made. It is the systems in which they operate. The rest is their innovativeness and their creativity in their minds that they were able to apply. Computers now and computer technologies are spread all over the world. You can do anything, anywhere, as long as you can access, you have the tools and you can access internet. The only tricky part is when it comes to financing. And that's what we would really need to fix. So the young people who are innovative, who are creative, those who are in the computer technology, those who want to go into the arts and entertainment. I mean, look at Nigeria, those who are in the arts and entertainment. Nigeria, I think it's called Nollywood, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. India, Bollywood is a multi-billion-dollar industry in India. And those in Nigeria and in India, it is local content. So again, an environment that is conducive, an environment where talent is encouraged and supported, and success leads to success. I can tell you, when you have 1, 2, 3, 4 young people in their 20s, in their 30s, who succeed to that magnitude, the rest will just simply follow. The environment has to be created. That's our intention, that's our desire, and I believe by God's grace, we will create that environment in this country.
I have a quick follow-up question on something you mentioned earlier, that you are currently looking for resources, mobilizing resources to set up grassroots structures. Is Electoral Commission providing any facilitation to Ugandan political parties for building of grassroots structures or for any kind of political work?
Yes, it does, but there is a certain qualification for parties that get government funding. You have to have a member of parliament. So far, I think there is PPP. It has 1 member of parliament. It accesses some funding, but it is small. Maybe they get about 50 million. I think every head of an MP, the government contributes per head about 50 million. I think also JEMA gets about that same amount to have 1 member. DP has about 9, UPC has about 6, FDC has about 32 or so, NUP has about 57 or 60. However, even a party which has the large numbers like NUP, I think they get about 3-point-something billion a year. So when you spread it, I don't think that's enough money for them to do all the necessary work that they need to do. Nor can FDC, which gets about 1.7 billion a year, because that means gives them about 100 million per month. So that's why we think, and we've been advocating for this, that Ugandans need to make contributions to the parties which they believe in for two reasons. One, for us to influence the future. Our future can only be influenced when the parties are well-resourced and well-organized, and the parties which have got good discipline and focus can put that money to good use, to do recruitment, to do branch building, to do trainings, to attract and retain members, and do all the necessary preparation, not only to compete for power, but in the event that the party is in power, how to manage power itself. So it is necessary that we, the Ugandan people, finance the parties we believe in. And we're not talking about lots of money. We're talking about whoever has 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever they have. Because the accumulation of numbers, if you get like 50,000 Ugandans supporting one party, giving 10,000, that's 500 million per month. And for a party which is focused on discipline, that can do a lot for that party to build its capabilities.
Here comes a comment more than a question from Hajati256 from Twitter. I really would like you to address this in detail because it keeps popping up in many different conversations, so we should put this to rest once and for all. You have been working with Museveni for almost 35 years. How do you want Ugandans to trust you when so many atrocities of murder, incarceration, etc. were happening to people you want to lead while you are in your comfort zone? That is Hajati 256.
Well, Hajati can only try and find out my track record. Because there are times when you're in a country and even operating within a system, and the system commits a lot of mistakes, commits crimes. So at the end of the day, you also have to track down the record of an individual. Now, if you find that that individual has been involved at an individual level in committing those crimes, it's legitimate that you don't trust such people. But if you find that in spite of someone operating that kind of environment, that they remain with their integrity, they remain value-driven, then you support them. If you're not sure, you give it time, you keep asking until you are sure, because I wouldn't encourage anybody to trust any politicians whom they don't trust. Unfortunately, there are many of us in the field and there are many parties in the field. And I think that gives an opportunity for individuals to support whichever party they believe in. I wouldn't have any quarrel with anybody who says, no, we can't work with you because you operated in the movement, where we separated in 2004. That was the end. I didn't support Museveni in 2001. I remember in 2001, they hadn't gotten out of uniform yet. Those who are old enough at that time, who could have been listening to programs on Simba, I recall very, very vividly that a day before elections, they put an announcement. Some of the activists, political activists for the movement, for General Museveni, put on an announcement. They announced 5 names of generals, including mine, encouraging people to vote for General Museveni. I had to call the station myself, and I told them to write a counter statement, a counter message. And basically it was saying, I, Muntu, Mugisha, I've had the announcement which has been passed out. I don't subscribe that statement. I would like to encourage Ugandans to vote for whoever they want to vote for. It is their legitimate right. And for me, who is in uniform, I am not going to be partisan in this matter. So, as far back as then, I would stand for things that I believe in. Nevertheless, I'm always comfortable with people to support people whom they can trust.
Okay, moving forward, Alan Wesonga, Twitter again. Is the possibility of democratic transition still tenable? In the same breath, Hamidan from Twitter asks, the quest for a democratic transition and change of government seems unattainable under the current legitimate process of elections. What do you have in plan to cause change in Uganda? And what is your plan B?
I think for those of us who are involved in the change process, whatever the means by which this regime ends, what precedes whatever change will happen in as far as we are concerned, and that's why we are focused as Alliance for National Transformation, is to keep organizing ourselves 24/7. Because when you are well organized and you have got a capacity to apply your effort in whichever direction is required at any time, organizational capabilities are very, very critical. Not only in acting to hasten the exit of a regime like this, but also the post-management, which is a critical factor. That's why we concentrate all the time. So there's nothing which will divert us from that. There's a saying that says that success comes when, or victory comes when opportunity meets with preparation. If opportunities knock and you are not well prepared, they will pass. That's why we spend a lot of time on organizing amidst even the most challenging times. One, we also know that change will happen in whichever way it comes. And then what? Because we would want to break out of the vicious cycle that we've been caught up in for the last 60 years. And for us to break out of the vicious cycle, preparation is very, very important. And therefore, people who believe in a better future, you need to engage in parties and build them. And your participation in building parties is also as a way of building a culture of accountability. Because when you finance parties, then the leaders will get used their idea when they are asked by those who finance to account. So that parties also learn that culture, so that in the event that any party is in power, then it can give what it has. If a party is not accountable to its members who finance it, how on earth is it going to be accountable when it is in power? How will it manage national resources? So there are struggles we are involved in which need to be simultaneous. As we fight to exit this regime, we must also keep fighting on a daily basis to build a new culture or to reestablish a culture which existed in the past, but which has been undermined over a period of time because of political mismanagement. It's another.
Yes, I'm here. A gentleman called Mani Miro. We have a parliament comprised of 270 MPs from Western region, 256 MPs from the rest of the 3 regions. Why are you silent on this matter? Is it because you are from Western region too?
I keep talking about this matter so many times, but unfortunately, it seems we have not bumped into each other yet on the same platform all the time. And besides the imbalances in terms of regional representation, I think the biggest problem that we also need to start off when we are reforming parliament is the question of the numbers themselves. So we need to structure from different levels. One, it does not make sense in a country like Uganda, which has 45 million people, to have a parliament of 500 plus, I think 519 or 20. And India, which has got 1.2 billion people, has a parliament of 600 people. It doesn't make sense. But there are things which happen in this country which are mind-boggling. America, which has got the largest economy in the whole world, has got the 2 houses, the Senate and the Congress and the House of Representatives. I think there are 400 plus. We have got an ailing economy, and we are financing a parliament of 520. At a personal level, I don't believe that makes sense. It doesn't. So my own view would be, and it is a matter which we keep discussing in Alliance for National Transformation, and it is a matter which I believe almost where there is a consensus that we need to review the size of parliament. So when you are reviewing the size of parliament, you have now to start laying criteria for a new structure, how the parliament itself will be restructured. And when you are restructuring parliament, then you can incorporate all the other components that are necessary for you to build a country where there is fairness, where there is justice, where there is a state of affairs where people believe that they belong to a country, that they are all owners, regardless of whatever ethnic group they come from, whatever religious group they come from, whatever gender they come from. That's our focus as Alliance for National Transformation. That's why we keep appealing to Ugandans who are value-driven Because the party which builds a significant number of value-driven leaders at the national, district, as well as constituency and sub-county level. Because, for example, all the parties, at least in the opposition, if you look at their numbers in terms of leadership, those who have, of course, all of them have a delegates conference, all of them would be having about 1,500, 2,000 people. If out of the 2,000 people, you have got value-driven men and women, about 700, 800 of them, 900, they will drive that party in the correct direction. You want to tell me we don't have that kind of numbers of people in this country, honestly? But we spend time lamenting, throwing up our arms, looking from all directions. The solution is here in Uganda. We must apply our effort. We must put our there's nothing which can't change in the world where there are people who are determined, who are resilient, who are focused, who are dedicated to change their environment. This is nothing which is impossible, It's not.
Okay, yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, if we as human beings don't grab hold of work and don't influence change in ourselves as individuals, nothing's going to change. So next question comes from Marvin Rubagasira Baguma. How will you ensure and guarantee that there will always be peaceful transition of power and that we don't repeat mistakes most leaders have done in the past? And his follow-up question is, what is your take on Uganda being a federal republic?
On the first one, I mean, it's a work in progress. We have never had any smooth transition, ever. The most unfortunate thing, in 60 years, we will never, even for one time, except between after 62, when the British were lowering the Union, I think it's called what? The Union Jack or something like that, their flag. And the Ugandan flag was being raised. That's the only time when there was a smooth handover. Maybe before independence itself, maybe when there was, but that was under British control. It was still under the colonial when H1 handed over to, yeah, I think 61 or 62, but they canceled that outcome. So after 62 until now, every time a new president is coming in, another one is at the border running out. And, I mean, there needs to be a stop to that. How do we stop it? We all engage in the politics. We don't keep quiet. We pay taxes. We are Ugandans. We should be equal before the law. Yes, I am not naive. I see the environment which is oppressive, but that environment is not going to evaporate by accident. There must be exertion of effort to change that environment from the undesirable environment we are in to a desirable reality that we must participate in building. I don't see any other way out other than that. And we have got a significant number of people, only if they get committed and break out of the fear, which seems to paralyze so many, and reestablish our, rights and freedoms as a people, our dignity. I mean, I don't see how you can live in a country, even whether you have money, if you don't have dignity. What do you have? Because material possessions cannot replace dignity. Okay, you can't touch it. But to me, dignity is at the core of an individual's existence. If you have money and you don't have an environment that enables you to live in dignity, you are like a slave just who has money. And I really hope that the Ugandans who are ready to act, to create that environment. And in countries where that environment exists, it didn't fall like rain. It didn't fall by accident. It came out of people who were purposed to achieve that. And we have many Ugandans, basically, who can. Only maybe they are not tired yet. I don't know. It's in our hands. It's in nobody else's hands. I know for sure nobody's going to fall from Mars. Nobody's going to come from any other continent. Nobody's going to come from any other country to change our environment. We have to ourselves. The question of the federal state, yeah, I mean, once you create an environment which is conducive for debate, where there's nobody who is suppressed. I have a belief that literally anything under the sun can be discussed by the population through open engagement and can resolve all outstanding matters that there would be. Yeah.
A quick one. I can't remember the name who asked the question, but they asked if given the opportunity, would you be working with the NRM transitional government?
Well, that's another matter of discussing the party. But let me tell you,
Dr. Gum will be in shortly, okay? Thank you.
Forgive me, colleagues, because it's not a matter that we have ever taken a position on, but I can give you my own personal opinion. Even if ANT accepted to go in an arrangement where the driving political force in the government is NRM, and then they would want to go there and work with it, I would have no problem. I wouldn't stand in the way of the party. I, as an individual, would never, because I know the dynamics. And it's not only just here in Uganda. I've seen what happens. Because what are the dynamics behind such a setup? For a country to take a particular direction, the dominant force is the one which determines the direction. So if the dominant force, for example, is of a corrupt people, that's the direction the country will take. So if the NRM government is the one in the driving seat, and then others join it to go along, and is the one which wields the influence, and I know for sure that they are not about to change their ways. So why would I engage in such an organization? You know, I mean, in such an arrangement, I wouldn't at a personal level.
Okay, let's tackle some hot topics. Army, police. As a former military man and the army commander, tell us what is right and what is wrong with UPDF. Let's hear the good sides first.
UPDF is composed of young men and women and those who are middle-aged, who are dedicated to giving service to their country. Many of them are highly educated. Many of them are well-trained in military terms. So there is a significant number of officers and men who, if there was a conducive environment, can professionalize that army. Many of them would want to see a country that prospers. Many of them would want to see a citizenry that operates in an environment where they have dignity. Unfortunately, by the nature of politics in African countries, we are still a work in progress, where the executive has a domineering effect, you know, when it exerts pressure on the state security institutions. There's still that tug of war. And I know that the mistakes that are made by UPDF, out of 10, 8 are political. And the political leadership takes responsibility for that. Therefore, I would like to hope and believe that those of us who are in the opposition, as we build ourselves to know that one of the significant things that any party which takes power before any others has created that environment where it gives space for those officers and men who are well trained, who are well educated, can professionalize the army and also become non-partisan. Why they need to have a national political consciousness, but they need to be non-partisan, so that they are ready to support any party that wins power and takes over and runs government, that it becomes a national institution that just supports a government regardless of which party is running into it. That's my hope. That's our desires Alliance for National Transformation. If it's the will of God and we take power, certainly it is one of the things that would establish in this country, not only for the army, but as well as the police services. Police services has a lot of problems. It is not well-funded. It is not well-motivated. It has also got many officers and men who are well-educated, but the resources are misdirected. I think the department which gets the highest amount of resources in police, the anti-riot department, you know? So that tells you where the focus of this regime is. It is not in CID. It is not in, in the investigative capabilities of the CID to ensure that people can get justice, that the cases are very well investigated so that the prosecutions department gets well investigated files so that those who contravene the law can be well prosecuted, successfully prosecuted, and found guilty and sentenced so that there can be justice in the country.
Do you think Afande Kahinda Otafire is well positioned to make reforms in the police? I would really like to hear your opinion on what can be done, what he can do to bring police force into better performance. And obviously, myself, just like everyone else, I'm bothered by the senseless loss of life in traffic accidents, and then by the laxity with which police carries out investigations and on any crimes, and they're never-ending investigations with no resolution. Do you think Kahinda is the man?
I'm not so sure that however good anybody would be in most of these ministries, which are key, that they can do much. One, when it comes to resources, the intentions, the immediate, the medium-term and long-term focus of the regime is seen through the budget. So a government can talk about anything it wants to talk about. It has in so many words. But when you want to know its real intentions, you look at the budget. So whatever minister is in any department, like in this particular case, you're talking about internal affairs, how will they push for the necessary things that are needed? For example, motivation of the police force, training, recruitment, sustenance of the staff, buying equipment, the laboratories which are required. How will they do that unless they have money? There's nothing anybody can do in most of those ministries.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but for the benefit of our listeners, do you know of any mechanisms that are in place where any citizen of Uganda can actually review the budget, the budget planning and the budget of the country? Where would you advise people to look for budget information, and to are there any places where people can complain or raise their voice as individuals?
Yes, I mean, from the legal perspective or from the institutional angle, yes, you'll be told that you can go and meet a committee of parliament. You can even make appointments and meet a minister. However, the issue is, will they be able to resolve your concern? That's what the problem is. The problem has always been in implementation. There are many plans since 1962 until now. Some of the plans, if they were well implemented, right now we would be in the league of countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, like South Korea. The weakness has always been in implementation, the focusing of resources. Even now, you are talking about resource allocation. Even before you get to misallocation of resources, you also have to plug the leakages that there are. I think the latest figure I saw is that the money that we lose through corruption and financial abuse has now gone to about $1 billion United States dollars. So any government that would have disciplined men and women, even before you go into the reallocation itself, you plug loopholes like that, and you can imagine if you can recover $1 billion United States dollars a year that leaks out, what it would do if you focus it in an area like education, or in health, or in even like in the law and order sector, in police, in the prosecutions department and the Ministry of Justice. Again, it's discipline. I really like to appeal to Ugandans, as we normally do. The Ugandan men and women of integrity, you have to make the necessary sacrifices to shape the future. You need to scan along, the parties in the opposition. Look for the parties that you are convinced you can subscribe to. Then join them, influence them, create strength where there's been weakness. where there's weakness so far, to prepare on how the situation we're involved in can be turned around. There's no individual who can ever give you what they don't have. Nor can organizations ever give you what they don't have. What they have is what they'll give you. Maybe I should again refer to what I had talked about earlier on. The dominant force in a political organization, once that organization takes power, is the one which will determine the direction of the country. You know, and that's why it is very, very important. The young people, yes, there are sacrifices to be made. I understand the environment is not the best, but at the same time, to shape the future and create the environment that will enable you to exploit your talents, to exploit your skills, to apply your creativity, your innovativeness that is God-given. You have to create that environment. Therefore, participate in the parties, because they are the vehicles of governance. You can't run away from that.
Okay, let me jump out of the army and the police topics straight into current politics and current affairs. So I have a question from Gumisiriza John Timothy, and he is asking, maybe taking us back a little bit, but according to all presidential candidates last year, you were loved and everyone pointed you out as the best candidate, but people didn't vote for you. Even now, most Ugandans say you are the best candidate. So my question is, why don't they vote for you?
I keep bumping into many people who tell me that. I hear many people who say that I don't have electricity. I don't know, I've searched my mind to find out what that exactly means. They agree. They say, you guys, you have got the best message. Also believe that you have got organizational capability. But they tell me that, Muntu, you don't have electricity. So, we have to keep working to convince Ugandans that, you know what, and some give me advice on how I can acquire that electricity. But unfortunately, some of the things they tell me to do, I really can't go along with them. Because at the same time, there are things that I can't do, which I tend to think are populist. So I would like to keep on communicating the message that we have. And then hopefully at some point, people can reach a point where they can say, okay, it is the message, it is the management capabilities, it is the team that we see in a party that will enable us to live where we are at and take us where we desire. And that's what I hope will happen.
But the issue of electricity, I think we have like 75% of the country has the same problem. They are completely off the national grid. Because somehow electrification didn't take off, isn't it? However, we'll get back to that maybe later. Lucky Akan is asking very direct question. Are you coming for the next presidential elections, 2026?
When I said that I don't have, that they say I don't have electricity, I was translating from a local language. I have not heard people say it in English. But in Uganda,
no, I get it. I
understand. Muntu toina masanyarazi. So I hope I'll get someone who will give me an idea that is compatible with the things I feel comfortable doing, which would bring that masanyarazi. There are things I can't do. There are things I simply can't do. As people say that that's the way you would get that masanyarazi. As 2026, we are in Alliance for National Transformation. We keep on building our capabilities and prepare ourselves to be able to take power and manage this country well as a team. And I believe at the point when we are looking for candidates, I would definitely want to offer myself, but we also have processes that would be party processes through which we have to go through. If there is any other person, we compete. If I become flag bearer without competition, I have no problem with that. But as I've already said before, and I have to repeat, it really doesn't matter. Even if I, Muntu, became the flag bearer, even if all the other parties even rallied behind me, I am making a supposition. I keep saying this over and over, and I can't have no understanding, I have no clue at all why this hasn't sunk yet. Without us building the capabilities which are needed on a countrywide basis, either in one party or two, so that when there is a coalition, that these capabilities are brought together. I can tell you, whichever common candidate, even if it is me, I may not move beyond Kajansi with that flag that I am going to take State House in Entebbe. But many people keep focusing on the individual. I mean, if you don't have organizational capability in many ways, in also the culture of Ugandans raising resources to put into the politics, to ensure that we have branch networks, to ensure there is logistical support, there is financial support, to raise agents, to raise candidates, to do campaigns, to ensure that we have agents on all the 35 or 36,000 polling stations. How on earth do you expect any candidate to go through? Even if I acquired Masanyarazi, that they say, I know that even if I Muntu has the Masanyarazi, anybody else would have the Masanyarazi. If we don't build the organizational capabilities to put behind any candidate, however good he or she is, forget about doing much. This is my own personal.
Just a quick question here coming up now. How is ANT prepared for Omoro by-election? That comes from Joan.
Yeah, we've got a candidate. Got a candidate, Oscar Chiza, and right now we are trying to mobilize resources to put behind him, and we also go there and campaign and pass our message and fight. If it is the will of God, we take the seat. If we're unable to take it, we would have disseminated our message. We would also build the necessary infrastructure and also bring light to a number of things which are not being heard at times at the grassroots level.
Right. I want to take us back on track with what I prepared. Recent discussions on the active UPDF officer entering active politics. The Twitter questions were many on that topic, and I'd like to share some of them with you. The Twitter user Uthi, what advice do you have for us as former CDF if Muhoozi remains in uniform while trying to become president? Do you still have faith in the UPDF being a national army?
What we are trying to do really is to keep on mounting pressure, because there is a legal requirement spelled out in the law that you don't participate in politics when you are still in uniform. That's the only thing we are asking General Muhoozi to respect. That's the only thing we are asking the Commander-in-Chief to respect. Only that. Well, and we made our minds known on that question. We are not challenging General Muhoozi in terms of him having the desire to run for an office in this country. We're not saying he should, get out of uniform. The only unfortunate thing I have noticed from the responses I have seen so far, because initially I was not very sure whether it was the Commander-in-Chief who was holding him back. I had a thought. I thought that maybe General Muhoozi wants to respect the law and get out of uniform, but the Commander-in-Chief was stopping him from doing so. But from the response I've seen from General Muhoozi, it seems he has not gathered the necessary moral courage to do the right thing. And then, unfortunately, the Commander-in-Chief also seems to lack the moral courage also to do the right thing. So that's where we are at now. So what happens next? It remains to the rest of us who are citizens, who pay taxes. Do we keep mounting pressure, or do we throw up our arms and keep on lamenting like many people tend to do? My view is that we keep on mounting pressure, because there is nobody who should be above the law. Whether it is the current president, whether it is any incoming president, whether it is the current army chiefs or the future ones or whoever. It's a country, 45 million people. We are growing, we have a fast population growth rate. 20, 25 years, we are going to hit 100 million people. If we don't build a new culture, if we don't build stable institutions, functioning systems, how on earth do you think this country will be like when we hit 100 million people? When there are people who are trying to make it a banana republic? It's an existential threat. I don't know why people don't understand it that way. I mean, struggle is a process. It's a continual thing. But also success of a struggle depends on the extent which citizens are able to stand and say, we pay taxes, and that gives us a right to question anybody. That's where I'm coming from. That's what we'd like to keep on encouraging Ugandans to do. Religious leaders, cultural leaders, anybody who has gotten a platform, regardless of which party, because even those who are in the NRM, they are citizens. I mean, if there is any problem, all of us will get the flack. All of us need to respect the law. It doesn't matter who.
So the question from Omar on the same topic is, will you push for immediate resistance or for sustained opposition strategic capacity building in the face of Muhoozi's succession plan? Which is best for Uganda now?
I have no problem with the different actors taking whatever direction they are convinced about, because we have got different tendencies within our country. There are those who believe in doing civil disobedience. It's a legitimate tool of struggle. I have never had any problem with that. There are those who believe in building institutional capabilities and keep on organizing, not only to hasten the exit of a regime through the electoral process or putting their weight behind any other option that there would be, but also having in mind that when General Museveni exits, which will happen, that's inevitable, that they're in a position to manage the country and put in the right direction. That's why we are at Alliance for National Transformation. But for example, individuals can exercise their own rights, do whatever direction they want to go. There's no one stop anybody determining the direction they want to take as individuals, even when they are members of the party.
There's a question from Herbert Uwelukosi. Why did you, General Tinye Fuza, Colonel Kiza Besigye, and General Tumukunde, you all decided to have different parties, yet you all share a similar problem statement and obviously a similar career? What happened there? Why aren't you together?
What's the name of the person?
His name is Herbert Uwelukosi.
Okay, no, I need just Herbert. If you are on the Twitter or any other platform, allow me to make some corrections, and I hope I'm right. If I'm wrong, then correct me, maybe using any other channel, maybe after we finish. I have a sense that General Tinjifuza doesn't have a party, doesn't belong to any party. I have a sense that General Tumukunde doesn't have a party. He had a pressure group which was only for the electoral process after the elections. I don't think he's engaged in activities of any party. So from the question, it looks like I am the one who belongs now to a party. So I am in the ANT because I believe in the values and objectives of ANT. I believe we are a value-driven organization. We subscribe to values to which we would want to attract many other Ugandans, men and women, to see how we can influence the future along what we believe in. Now, even if the other generals or any other individual senior actors believe in a different organization because of the principles and objectives or values those parties stand for, I would see no harm in them operating within those parties. The only thing I have, which worries me, unity doesn't mean that you must be physically together. And that seems to be the dominant impression many people have. You don't have to be together. You don't have to be in one party. But if you have leaders, a significant number of them, who are mature enough, they can cooperate and coordinate effort around a common purpose. So you build around unity of purpose, unity of objectives. You agree that this is where I want to go. And then you focus your effort, even when you are different, you bring your organizational capabilities together, and then you move in that direction. I think that's why there's a problem. The problem is not that because they are different parties. I've never seen that as a problem, or that there are different strategies. You can have different strategies. It happens. It happens in business, it happens in the military, in the politics, it happens in many other countries. What lacks in our country so far is a deficit of maturity, a deficit of common interest that drives political actors. it seems that so far, unfortunately, many of us who are in politics are driven more by self than common interest. But we have to treat that, because there are many Ugandans who are driven by common interest, but in other sectors. They're in the economy, they are in private sector, in public sector, in other places. They have left politics for those of us who think that the end justifies the means, the ones who want to do all kinds of things to enrich themselves. But as the Bible says, whatever a person plants or sows, that's what they reap. So there's no solution out of this, again, until the Ugandans who want to see maturity, want to see responsibility exercised in politics to get into the fray. Then we clean up the politics and it becomes a normal activity. People compete, those who win go into power. Those who lose, get on the side. Even countries like Ghana, which went into the messes we went through, they have gone to that level. Of a country down here, Botswana, has been at it for the longest time. I mean, they're not different. It is possible here. The solution is that, and I see, like in the private sector, I keep using this example over and over. I hope people will not get tired of it. I keep using it until this point sinks. Hopefully, many Ugandans who operate in the private sector, and they, even when they are in top management, in most of these corporate organizations, they are 95+%. They are Ugandans. They make private sector entities work. They function. They make super profits. So what makes it different when it comes to politics? I can't decipher that yet. But we're going to keep speaking out this over and over until hopefully that sinks.
So we should be looking for a business manager, not the next president, it seems. Anyway, there is a question. Go ahead.
Both can work. I mean, you can be a politician, but who focuses on systems building, on institutions establishment, on a business mindset. I mean, look at, for example, the example of Singapore, which has been understudied by many governments since 1962 from Uganda, until Singaporeans got tired and said, you keep sending delegations here over and over, but you seem never to make progress. Every delegation that comes starts again from scratch. What happens? Lack of discipline. Because Singapore was literally, they were politicians. Lee Kuan Yew was a politician, but he was business in terms of management principles. They built the systems in Singapore, influenced literally by business management principles, attracted the best of the Singaporeans into the public service, built a meritocracy. And you can see what Singapore is.
Yeah, of course, it's something to aspire to, definitely. A gentleman called George Tibei Haho, he's asking, would you encourage members of FDC and NUP to cross to ANT? If yes, why?
I normally never pursue people who are already in the opposition parties. Our biggest focus as Alliance for National Transformation is there is a group, I don't know this last time, I've not looked at the statistics, but in 2011, in 2016, there were about 42% of Ugandans who didn't vote. Those are the ones we are targeting, mostly. Because there's a reason why they're disenchanted. There's a reason why they're disappointed. That's why we keep talking to Ugandans to say, look, engage. Situation is not going to change itself. Being frustrated is not a solution. Giving up is not a solution. Engage. Hopefully that we can motivate them, and then they can come in. There are many independents. For example, as we speak now, I think independents are the single most group in parliament, larger than any opposition party. We focus on those. And then, of course, we are preparing ourselves to reap from the avalanche that we fought from the NRM the moment it starts the process of free fall, which it seems it's already started on. Because those who are in the opposition are already in the opposition, even if If they choose because they like a party, maybe from one opposition party to the other, it's their legitimate right. But it can't be a focus because it doesn't add numbers overall in the opposition.
I think this question ties in very well to what you've just said. Okiror Stephen asks, do you see Uganda having only two parties, NRM and United Opposition?
United Opposition as a party, I don't see that happening soon. But coordinating effort, yes, that is possible. It is within our means to reach. But a number of things would have to be done within the parties themselves and us at the leadership level. There are many challenges that we face, as leaders. There are things I can't say here in the public, but things which we'll have to say behind closed doors, as we normally do. If we overcome them, then the results will come out positive. If we don't, we remain in the same situation that we've been in.
I want to move to corruption. We talked about it a little bit, but I think we need just to have a few minutes of in-depth analysis. First of all, do you think we still have people who are incorruptible in positions of power? And who are they, if you know them?
There are many who are incorruptible, but who are not in positions of power. In the positions of power, really many have been broken down. I know many who used to really be steadfast, but they have been broken down systematically and deliberately. Because we have got I don't know what use. A group of people who have deliberately and systematically worked to bring this country down on its knees. And to bring a country on its knees, you work on the integrity of individuals. You work on compromising them. You weaken them. You impoverish them. You undermine them. And then you can manipulate them effectively. And I am worried that that has worked to a large extent. But there are many Ugandans who can replace those, who could be steadfast in politics, but they remain outside. And they're hoping something good can happen. That's why I have a problem. As for those who are still, because they're also quite a number, in parliament, there are some good men and women. In government, there are a number of good men and women, but there's no way I could voice out their names. I can tell you within a short time, most of them will be crushed. One thing that makes this regime paranoid is to hear of people who, when they are standing side by side with the leaders in government, they make those leaders in government to be seen for who they are. Because when there is no comparison, then people don't pay attention. But when there's a light and then there's darkness, people can clearly see that, there's darkness in that area.
What do you think of
it is systematic.
So what do you think of the various probes and inquiries whose results never see the light of day? What would you do differently?
By being transparent. That's why we keep on talking about get Ugandans who believe in value-driven politics. People who build first a team at the national level, because if you have got maybe 20 men and women in cabinet, for example, because that's another area. I hope opposition parties, whichever takes power, will reduce the number of cabinet. They are now 80-something. Some of them, even Genome 7 doesn't not record their names. So if you have a cabinet of, say, 21 or 25, and out of those, 20 are strong men and women who are committed to turn around the destiny of this country, it is possible. And also when there is a leader who's also disciplined. So we have to work for that. We do that in NT, that's what we're working on. Keep on trying to attract more and more Ugandans, to build a team of that nature, of that, yeah. Was there a follow-up question?
No, we can move on. I want to ask a question by Donald Patrick Okumu. does AMT have a roadmap or alternative strategies that can help resolve the current issues Ugandans are facing, like high commodity and fuel prices, etc.? So is there a policy strategy?
Even if tonight any opposition party would be placed into government and say, solve these problems, they would start from a very, very weak position, because there are a number of solutions that would needed to have been built a while back. Because the most meaningful interventions in such times of crisis, like, I mean, the one we are facing, is when there is a responsibility at the level of national management and implementation of political and economic policy to build reserves. We are a landlocked country. We have seen experiences in 2007 when the whole country became paralyzed because of a problem in Kenya. Now we have a global situation. We don't even have a 1 day's reserve fuel in any fuel reserves in this country. There's a fuel reserve depots in Jinja. There are those in Nakasongora. There had been plans to build reserves at a regional level. None is there. I can understand the first 10 years it would have been very difficult because of the war situation that there was. But since that time, they needed to have been focused. Because if you build reserves, mostly for diesel, because diesel is the one which affects mostly economies, because of transportation of food, because of trucks and buses for passenger vehicles. Then you can do interventions to see how to manage prices. If you have reserves which you have built over time, that takes about 3 months to 6 months, then you can steer through a crisis. Two, food reserves. We don't have any food reserves in this country. So if we are hit by a serious famine, we have to go with a basket begging all over the world, looking for food from elsewhere. A landlocked country, a country with 45 million people, and we don't have reserves, because no matter when you have food reserves, you have to ensure that you build adequate amounts that can take you through a crisis between 3 to 6 months of things, the dry foods like rice, like wheat, like beans, like maize. We had some facilities, even those, there's nothing. Or you create an environment where there is private sector participation, But you'd have to have people first who are disciplined, who are focused, who are looking at things from that perspective. Unfortunately, we've not had that. And then two, applying resources that we have, pumping resources into sectors that need to be resuscitated for the economy to be jump-started since we came from COVID, put it into smaller scale industries, put it into an area like where there can be quick returns on investment in the comparative areas where we've got comparative advantages in tourism, in agriculture, in food processing, or along the whole value chain of agriculture. So that money goes into the pockets of Ugandans. Or create a scheme. Go and, for example, temporarily for 1 or 2 or 3 years, introduce a feeding program in schools, or whether it is posho, or whether it is milk, whatever other food. Because when you pump that money into the school systems, you do two things, to kill two birds with one stone. You are benefiting the schools with feeding the children and therefore empowering them to study better, by also pumping money into the producer. That goes into the economy. That's a way of rekindling the sectors in the economy that have really been hit hard, But again, it requires discipline, it requires focus.
Let me jump in here. Today, I believe Daily Monitor published an article about the Uganda Financial Capability Survey, which was carried out by Bank of Uganda. And the survey results indicate that only 1% of 22.8 million working Ugandans earn more than 1 million shillings per month. and 49.2% working Ugandans earn less than 150,000 shillings per month. How do you define gainful employment? And what are the ANT ideas to change this grim situation? This is my question.
There needs to be focus of national resources into the productive sectors. Maybe touching on the question I've just talked about. Get entrepreneurs, startups that have run for a while, where you can go and look at their management skills and capabilities, was operating on a smaller scale. Maybe they're employing 5 people, maybe they're employing 10 people, but you go look in their books, you go look at where they are focused. You put money in those to stabilize them and to grow them, because when you grow them, you create more employment. Because the only route of creating employment is through private sector investment. You support the cooperative unions, you support the circles, because when you find people who have aggregated resources, then you help them to invest in the areas where they'll be able to get good returns on investment. This is a virgin country. In the services, in manufacturing, in agriculture, in tourism. When you do that, you sustain those who are at the small scale, you support those who are in medium scale and the large scale. Then, of course, you also create an environment where you attract foreign direct investment. You deal with the issues which are frightening FDI, like corruption, like red tape, or many people who are fleeced. You know, I hear many stories. I'm not going to repeat names. Where you find someone is bringing huge investments in the country. You hear that they have gone into an office of a minister, and you hear that the minister asked for 3 billion Uganda shillings as a cut, $1 million, $2 million. Why on earth do you expect that any serious investor who comes into Uganda and you ask them for a bribe? This investor is the one who, when they invest successfully, will create jobs. And you ask them for a kickback. There are many investment destinations on a global scale which are more efficient, which can, attract these people to go. They find their efficiency within a very short period of time. They have got investment licenses. There's no corruption. Nobody intimidates them. Nobody tries to blackmail them. Those are the things that we need to fix. And then we create jobs. And as the economy grows, jobs are created. People can reinvest, those who, wherever they are, create vehicles for investment, but also work day and night. This is not something that we expect only from politicians. This is a culture that we must all deal with as Ugandans. Because how will we resolve this culture? It needs to be discussed wherever we are, whether we are in bars, whether in restaurants, whether in weddings, wherever we get an opportunity, one-on-one to discuss. If we don't create a Ugandan management class that can manage resources which are not their own and grow them, and the person who has that capital sits wherever they are comfortably, how do you expect us to succeed? That happens in a number of countries. Kenya, you find the people who are running one enterprise, maybe they're in hotels. They want to branch out into another area. They'll put money under management and they'll manage it, and the person will get good returns on investment. There's a problem here in Uganda. We don't trust each other. 2, 3, 4 people can't work together. When they work together, one is trying to fleece them. It is a management problem. It's a culture. We have to fight, overcome it. And then we can see how we can all participate in growing as ourselves as individuals, as corporate entities, and as a country. We have challenges.
I'm going to quickly take you to a question asked by Matundaman. What is your take on agriculture and industrialization? And do you see, this is his second question, do you see the financial future of Uganda being built around crypto-based technology?
Crypto-based technology, I don't have comprehensive information about it yet. There's a global debate, at country levels. It is a debate that we want to fully understand before we take a definite decision on cryptocurrencies. But in terms of agriculture, agriculture is an area where we have got a comparative advantage as a country. We've got, I think, 60+% of our land is arable. If it is not 80%, I don't have the figure. 70% of our population is in agriculture. Unfortunately, it is in subsistence agriculture. We have got opportunities along the whole value chain of agriculture, where so many opportunities can be created. But there has got to be, I think, a dual process by any government. One, how do you put together people who have got small capital base? How do you put them together through effective cooperative unions? Because we have a history. But for us to build cooperative unions which are effective, again, we have to tackle the issue of management culture. We have to tackle the issue of trust, because it is one area where huge resources can be pooled. As we speak, there are some circles which have got billions of shillings. Now, when you create an environment where they know that, yes, when you put this money in a well-studied area, that you'll get good returns on your investment, that your money is not easily going to get lost because of the environment, the legal environment, the political environment, the cultural environment. That's one avenue through which you can mobilize resources locally and you put it into agriculture. Because there are many people who have got large chunks of land, but they don't have resources. They don't have capital. So those you can organize around cooperatives. Then there are those who are already entrepreneurs, and they are at different levels of the value chain of agriculture. Then you pump money into those as well. And then those who are, for example, in agro-processing, you support that across the whole line of whatever we produce. Because there, Ugandans, we cannot compute yet. We can at a future date. Compete in maybe computer production or vehicles or whatever other things that can be done. But we are not yet at the level where the technological base and the capital base for many individuals. So you need to grow them in the areas where there is comparative advantage, in tourism, in the service industries, in agriculture, and then they can be promoted. More or less like what happened in South Korea. Those who started, these chaebols, they used to call them chaebols. Look at Hyundai, look at Daewoo, look at is another big group in South Korea. Government had to take deliberate efforts to back up the entrepreneurs in those areas. South Korea is one of the biggest shipbuilders right now. They make vehicles, they're in high tech. I mean, you see the phones that they're making. All these things can happen here. There's focus, there's discipline, and people who are, attracted by building a country, who are driven by the philosophy that when you build a country and it is stable and it is growing steadily in economic terms, you can benefit as an individual. Not the other way around. People whom we have, I mean, if a minister asks for 1 million shillings from an investor, that means that their philosophy is upside down. That's what we need to eliminate.
I agree. Tell me, what solutions does A&T have to land fragmentation? Obviously, land fragmentation is a common issue and it hinders commercial farming. So this question comes from a gentleman named Awoi. And his second question is, what do you think about setting of farm gate prices of agricultural produce under cooperatives and using the profits to provide inputs and mechanization?
Once you have cooperatives resuscitated, they have good management, and they have put resources, there are many areas where government can collaborate with the cooperatives to set policy that gives advantage not only to the cooperators, but also the economy as well. So at this point, there are details I basically can't go into. And Nada, come again, the initial part of the question.
The initial part of the question was on land fragmentation.
Land fragmentation, Thank you. Yes, thank you. That's a very complex area. The areas where it is so complex, areas like Ankore, like Chigezi, where land is so fragmented that right now I think the average holding could be maybe 2 or 3 acres. Now, there are areas which still have large holdings, like in the north, like in the east, and a number of them are clan-based. My hope is that there will be a disciplined government that can work with the communities in those areas. One, for the communities themselves to design the solutions, working with the government, where government can give support in where they are comfortable. For example, if you find a clan has got 30 square miles of land, for them, once they form themselves into an investment vehicle, that therefore they don't go ahead with more fragmentation, that they use that investment vehicle, and government can give support in different ways in which they can grow themselves in whatever area of investment they want to go to. Most of it would be agriculture, but there are many also areas in the north where you find that there are opportunities for tourism. There are opportunities even for going into a number of agro-processing industries. But the question of land, that's a question that we need to discuss. And my view is that the communities in a particular area, most of the elite are the ones that would need to take the lead in formulating policy for a government, whatever they are comfortable with, because there are many models. When you go to a country like Israel, they have got 3 different models. They have got large commercial farms run by individuals or run by corporate bodies. Then they have what they call a kibbutz. Kibbutz is where you find like cooperators. It's almost like what used to happen in Ujamaa in Tanzania. That one failed in Tanzania, but in Israel it works, because I think it depends on the mindsets of the people in a particular area. But they have got another model called Mashav. Mashav is where you find that you are in a Gombora or a sub-county, and maybe you have got 5,000 acres. Maybe there are 200 families. What they do is that each remains with their own land, but they bring resources together and they contribute in buying machinery and inputs. And they have a plan in using that machinery, whether it is tilling the land, plowing, whether it is in harvesting, whether it is in storage. At the times they go there, of course, they also go to levels of processing. So they pull resources and they do that. You don't have to follow models elsewhere. We can design our own models. We have got many educated people. One thing Uganda has is talent, is expertise. But if it is not put to good use, many ideas will just not work.
I want to end with something that is close to my original home. Daniel Okiror is asking a question about what do you think about Uganda's position on the Russia and NATO come European crisis, and what would you do to shield the Ugandan economy from the external economic shocks that are currently being experienced by most countries?
I think what we need to do as Uganda, as a landlocked country, besides building reserves, which I've already talked about, fuel reserves and food reserves, to work very closely with the regional countries. Hopefully, East African community succeeds so that they can put resources together and work in areas where we have seen our vulnerabilities. For example, in drugs manufacturing. Because if there's paralysis in the rest of the world and there can't even be flights or anything, and we don't have the capacity to manufacture the most basic of drugs that are required by the majority of populations, or all inputs which are required in the health services sector, we would be highly vulnerable. So that's an area we need to really focus on a regional basis. And also to work closely on the integration process here in East Africa, because we have got markets which are huge now, close to about, when Congo joined, I think we are close now to 300 million people. So when you have discipline in building domestic economies in the 7 entities, and then they integrate at an economic level, ensure that there is effective implementation of the customs union, ensure that there is effective implementation of the common market, ensure that there is effective implementation of the monetary union. Hopefully, we can also realize a political union would be a powerhouse when we can contain any shock from anywhere. I have no doubt about that in my mind. If you have discipline at leadership, 7 entities. Now, Russia, Ukraine, it's a very tricky thing. I think force should not be used as a tool of influencing political direction anywhere, however powerful any country is. I think Russia needed to have used different methods. However, now that there's already a war, I see a problem on the EU side. One problem I noticed, I don't have the workings or the full understanding of why on earth Ukraine, knowing how Russia could have responded to Ukraine joining NATO, why they went ahead to edge it on to join NATO. And more so, when they knew for sure, because now this is now public knowledge, it is self-evident that NATO knew that in the event that Ukraine is attacked, that there would be no boots on the ground in Ukraine from NATO. Why on earth would do that? Because Ukraine is being devastated. Naturally, Russia is a superpower. It has nuclear weapons. It can threaten, and like it has, and NATO is not going to step in other than giving weapons. But there are people dying. Cities are being razed to the ground. So what I can't understand is why there was no such expectation to a level where, hopefully, again, I must say that I don't know the workings of EU, why it was not possible to encourage Ukraine to participate economically in EU, but without encouraging it to join NATO. I mean, this world, we have not reached a stage where lambs are going to lie in the bosoms of lions. We're hoping we reach there. So superpower politics still plays a role in world politics. When you have a superpower in the neighborhood, you must see how to operate in that kind of environment. How do you create stability in an area? How do you ensure that you manage peace, even in view of countries which are that powerful, to ensure that you don't end up having a conflict, erupting? Where we are at now, my hope is that EU and the US, working with Ukraine, would have to see how do they negotiate with Russia to cause a settlement in which Ukraine starts rebuilding without necessarily being a member of NATO, but cooperating with EU. And Russia, which keeps on expressing fears of existential threat, to have commitments to say, now this is a line that none of you should cross, not from Russian side, not from NATO side. I don't know. We will keep watching and see what happens. But I have a feeling that at the end of the day, the only settlement of that war, I don't think Russia can overtake the whole of Ukraine. I doubt whether that can happen. But nor do I think that Ukraine can fully drive Russia out of the territories where it is so far. So it looks to me from the distance where you can see things that they will reach at some point a negotiated settlement. But the question is, the people who are dying in the meantime, why? Why? If it is almost clear that that's what is likely to be the case, why not negotiate and stop the carnage? That's the only way I do look at things so far from where we are, because there's a lot of information we lack, and therefore we cannot give maybe a more comprehensive analysis of that situation. Definitely there's information we don't have.
Right. I want to bring this conversation to an end. Do you believe we were talking for more than 1.5 hours? I can't believe it, but here we are. I have thoroughly enjoyed conversation with you, General Muntu. I would like to give you an opportunity to give your couple of closing words, and we let our people go to their activities and to contemplating what has been discussed this evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to interview you. Give us your closing remarks.
The pleasure is mine, Nada. Anytime. Thank you for hosting me and creating this opportunity where we can communicate with many Ugandans and possibly even non-Ugandans who are interested in Ugandan affairs. One thing I think we need to work for is to resuscitate hope in the people. There's nothing which has no end. Whatever has a beginning has an end. But at the same time, nothing happens by accident. So whatever future we desire, we must be the ones to shape that future. Therefore, I would like to call upon Ugandans, mostly the educated class, engage politically, different levels, fund parties, engage at policy formulation level to advise parties, management level where you can advise behind the scenes the parties you subscribe to, overcome fear, break out of the blanket of fear, stand firm, let's fight for our country. We are citizens, we pay taxes. There's nobody who should be above the law. The people who believe in tanks and weapons and all that, we have seen many people who have believed in tanks and weapons before. All of them have come to an end. My fear, I hope they won't come to bring a crisis. That's what we need to avoid. So we should do everything humanly possible. As we fight to change the regime, do whatever is possible and necessary to see if we can get stable and peaceful change to the extent that we can. If it is out of our hands, what can we do? Then we'll see how to deal with the post-crisis situation, again, which would need organizational capabilities to deal with that in the sad event that that would happen. You cannot hope that things can go that way, and then there is recovery by accident again. Preparation, preparation, preparation. Organization, organization, organization. Discipline, discipline, discipline. And focus. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, General. Thank you, our viewers and listeners, and see you again next month. Have a nice evening, everyone. That was all for today. Bye-bye.